Hey, it's Amy, this is Virgo. I'm back again with another aspect video. So I've already done a couple of aspect videos. I did start with Mercury, so if you have any, if you're curious about Mercury oppositions or Mercury conjuncts, I have that video. It really just goes more into an understanding of your communication style and how the different energies work together. A lot of times in astrology, what we'll look at, I also have the Sun conjunct video as well. But a lot of times in astrology, there's certain planets that come to the forefront a lot more, but Mercury is important. Okay, that's why I started with Mercury in this aspect series. Is your communication style is super important in how you navigate life. Whether we're talking about you just going out, right, and meeting new people, how do you communicate with them? What comes out? Whether it's about your relationships, your partnerships, your friendships, your people at work. Your Mercury sign is at play all day, every day. And so, especially when we think of romantic relationships, a lot of times people neglect to look at that. When we're looking at astrology, a lot of people are like, well, I'm in love, and what's his moon sign, and what's her moon sign, and what's her Venus, and what's her Mars, and what is all this? But it's like Mercury is going to tell us, do you guys communicate well? Okay, you can have all your ducks in a row in a relationship. Mercury will pause that. You have to work at it, though. A square doesn't mean it's impossible. You have to work at it, a word on aspects. So when we are doing aspects, sometimes people will ask me, well, wait a minute, you did the Mercury series. Why didn't you put Mercury conjunct the moon? Or why didn't you put Mercury square moon, or whatever the situation is? In astrology, the primary planet is always going to come first when you label an aspect. So therefore, it's not going to say usually Mercury square moon. It's going to say moon. Moon is one of the primary planets. Square Mercury, because the moon comes before Mercury. So, when we're thinking of different things, when it comes to aspects, don't get tripped up over that. It just means like the primary planet is going to come first, just like Pluto's an outer planet. So you're typically not going to see Pluto conjunct moon. You're going to see most astrological texts say Sun conjunct Pluto. Okay, so just wanted to clear that up. A personal planet embodies more of the personality, right? We know that. Your Mercury, obviously communication, your information style, how do you communicate information? Venus, your partnership, your approach to harmony, your values, things like that. So we know our personal planets are going to more embody us and characteristics about us. The outer planets, once we move past those planets, the outer planets are different, where you're going to share the same ones of people who are the same generation as you. The outer planets can deal more with outside influences, like things you had no control over, but things that showed up in your life or events that you experienced. So with that said, I just want to be very clear though. Yes, you can have a person who's like, wait, you could say your moon is square Pluto. And someone might say, okay, well, the moon is more important than Pluto. But wait a minute. Your chart, you might have a lot of aspects that relate to Pluto. You might even be someone who's a Scorpio rising. So we have to look at your chart. You would have to look at your chart to see. We can't just by default say, okay, if it's moon square Pluto, the moon is going to be the driving force of that aspect. It might actually be Pluto, is what I'm trying to say. So for example, let's say a person has Mercury square Jupiter, right? And we might say to ourselves, well, Mercury is the personal planet, right? We're going to focus mostly on Mercury through there. The person's going to, we're going to focus on interpreting that through Mercury's lens, but actually maybe it's Jupiter. Maybe this person is more of that adventurous type of learner, and they kind of shun typical information and the way in which we approach learning. They might rely more on their Jupiter, because let's say this person is a Sagittarius rising. Let's say this person has Jupiter aspects everywhere in their chart, and the person was born on a Thursday, and Thursday is related to Jupiter. So it means that when we're interpreting that person's chart, you would have to actually spend a little bit more time on Jupiter and not just say, oh, that's not really a personal planet. No, you would have to. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, it's possible you might relate more in the aspects. You might lean more to the Jupiter side than Mercury. You might be a person that says, hey, that Mercury side in my square is really difficult for me, but that Jupiter is really easy. Now, Sun cannot square natal Mercury. Okay, the Sun cannot square your natal Mercury. All right, in a transit it can, right, because the Sun is changing all throughout the year. But the Sun can be in the same sign as Mercury, or semi-sextile, which is the next sign over. Okay, and so semi-sextile is considered to be a it's a little different, it's a little awkward. The neighboring signs, the sign right next to your chart is not like you at all, right? When we look at that, it's like kind of different, you know, in a way. Some more than others. You know, you definitely could say Leo and Virgo are very different. You could definitely say Virgo and Libra are different, but Virgo and Libra both have kind of that analysis piece that they can sometimes relate to. But in general, a semi-sextile is going to be a little strange. It's going to feel a little awkward, you know. It's something that is different because it doesn't really connect with your core essence, right? The sign over from you, one, it's a different element, it's a different modality. It just feels different altogether, especially when you go in the order of the masculine signs and feminine signs. So it's a different feeling, right? But typically for a lot of folks, it's easy for you to figure out someone's Mercury sign if you know their sun sign, because there's only so many places it can be, right, when it's in Mercury. But we're going to move on to the deeper ones because, again, the sun and Mercury tend to be close together in this regard. Now, the moon square Mercury. So this is what I'm talking about, where sometimes in astrology, you're not going to see Mercury square moon, you're going to see moon first. Now, for a moon square Mercury person, so remember, square is producing tension. And if the moon is emotions and Mercury is information, it means there's something not aligned when it comes to your emotions and how you, learn. It could be a person who gets test anxiety. Could be a person who maybe school was really stressful for you, gave you a lot of just nervousness, anxiety, perhaps. There could be difficulty expressing or making sense of what is felt through words. You know, this could be the person that's like, they feel so intensely, but it's difficult to really get it out all the time. And I think a good release for a person like this would be to write it out. You know, use that Mercury energy, that communication, that thinking, that formulating your words. Write it out. This could be a person who expresses their emotions well on paper, more so than when they speak them. Emotions can sometimes distort memories. This could be, now again, depending on the person's chart. If you have a person's chart that shows some pretty extreme mood swings or something extreme, you could have a person where it's like, why are they remembering it like this? Because their emotions are in the way. Or perhaps they felt you did something to them. And so now it's coming out in communication of like, no, you did this to me. You said this to me. And, you're like, no, I didn't mean it like that. So it can distort how you feel about the information people are sharing with you. There can feel like a disconnect, right? More of a push to find ways to merge the two. This isn't a lost cause sign, a placement. It just might mean this person has to put more work into expressing their feelings. This could be a person who does really well when it comes to going to therapy, talking to other people about how they feel, if you want to merge it. If you're cool, if you have this placement, you're like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm okay. Then, do what you need to do. But for people who are like, this is difficult for you, that might be a way to do it. If you know anyone in your life who has this placement, you have to understand it's not natural for them to necessarily talk about their emotions or process them in the way that you might want them to. And so if they're open to speaking about how they feel, it might be okay to listen to them, because sometimes we assume a person isn't emotional because we're looking at their sun sign, but their moon and their aspects of their chart might mean they actually just want you to sit down and listen to them. So that could be a way to deal with anyone in your life that has this placement. Now, Mercury can only conjunct semi-square, semi-sextile, or sextile Venus. That is because Mercury can never be too far from Venus or the sun. All right, if you have a Virgo, that Virgo is not going to have Venus in Aries. That Virgo is not going to have Venus in Capricorn, okay? That Libra is not going to have Venus in Pisces. It's just not going to happen, all right? So conjuncts are covered in the Mercury conjunct video if you're interested in that. A sextile, okay, so a sextile is two signs apart. A sextile unearths beneficial qualities that may slightly differ by adding range to your communication. All right, so Mercury can only conjunct semi-square, semi-sextile, or sextile Venus. That means you're not going to find a Mercury square Venus. Now, in a transit, even a transit is going to be hard to do that, because remember, Mercury and Venus travel pretty close together. So you're typically not going to see that. Now, sometimes you can see certain placements. So for instance, you can definitely have Venus transiting and it is squaring your natal sun, right? But we want to be careful here because Mercury can never be too far from Venus or the sun, but it makes it easy for you to guess someone's Mercury sign. Venus sign. It makes it easier for you because there's only so many signs it could be. Now, conjunct, that means when it's in the same sign or within really, really close degrees of each other, creating a merge, so to speak. There is a Mercury conjunct video. A sextile on Earth's beneficial qualities that may slightly differ by adding range to your communication and partnership with others. I don't know why they didn't put a period at the end of that sentence, but I'm just talking through this. These notes are just for me to make sure I say what I need to say, so don't mind that. But you have to record these videos when I can. That way it's quiet because I have kids and, you know, sometimes it gets a little loud around here. But anyway, it unearths beneficial qualities. It adds range to your communication. You know, if you think about the signs that sextile each other, the ones that 2 signs apart, it adds to it. You know, Leo and Libra, Virgo, Scorpio, Virgo and Cancer. You know, there's a slight similarity there. You know, Gemini, Cancer. Not Cancer, I'm sorry, Gemini, Leo. Both kind of expressive, right? In different ways, of course. But the sextile adds range. So if you have anything that is sextiling each other, it adds a little bit of range, a little bit of complexity to the way it expresses, and it can help. A semi-sextile creates new awareness. Though I said before, like a semi-sextile is difficult because it's a little awkward at first, but it means when you're aware of something, you're better able to handle it. A person can discover their impact on their own relationship. So if someone has Mercury, semi-sextile Venus, you can learn how to use words, learn how to use communication to improve your likability. You might mentally understand that. This is the person who gets it. This is the person who's maybe a little self-aware. Like, yeah, I noticed that when I talk to people like this, I wasn't getting the results that I want, but I really try hard to be like this. That's usually a semi-sextile. This person is aware, okay? It doesn't come naturally, but they put some effort into that. And a semi-square. This can mean the individual struggles with feeling connected to others through harmony, right? Because a semi-square, though a square is going to be more of that open tension, a semi-square is more that internal tension inside. This could be a person who kind of recognizes or feels like, wow, something's off. You know, I'm trying to connect to people, or when I try to get in relationships, you know, it just doesn't feel the same, or, you know, I always feel like there's something lost in communication. That could be the semi-square, right, is the more difficult one because remember it's like a square. However, it just adds a little bit of a layer of internal struggle within the person in terms of how you communicate and how you harmonize with other people. This can mean someone who's constantly, not necessarily always having arguments, but it may feel like people aren't warming up to you, or people aren't expressive to you, or you feel like you're not expressive to them, or it's just hard sometimes to make those connections that you want to make. Mercury square Mars. So impulsive ideas, don't support action. This might be the person who thinks of things, but it doesn't align with what they actually end up doing. It's not the same as an opposition. Remember, an opposition has that similar point to it because it is an opposite sign, but it is the same. It has some similarities there, right? So for instance, Taurus and Scorpio, both fixed signs focused on security in some way, physical versus emotional. So but when you have 2 signs squaring, they don't have a lot to kind of work with. They're different, when you're making food, it's like adding in something that doesn't really go in there, right? Like you're not gonna all of a sudden put tomato sauce in pancakes. You're just not gonna do that. It's gonna create like a weird taste, and that's kind of like what a square is like. Action and learning seem different. So this might be a person who learns things, but it's harder for them to put them in action, right? They may learn a lot, but it doesn't always seem that it leads to them actualizing those different things. The individual is quick though. This could be a person who is able to do actions quickly. Even if they're like, I don't know about that, but it could, if they have a well-aspected Mars, lead to them doing something that actually is beneficial, even though they didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And so that's where it's a little bit of it's a lot of a disconnect between what the person thinks and wants to understand and wants to learn, and what they actually end up doing. You definitely can see a person who's not even in the field of what they want to do. It's that person that you're like, wow, my uncle so-and-so is an expert at this, but that has nothing to do with the job that he actually does on a daily basis. That's an example of that type of individual. Now, Mercury square Jupiter. Always fascinating. Mercury and Jupiter aspects are very fascinating. So remember, Mercury rules Virgo and Gemini, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So with that said, when we look at this aspect, I like to look at it through Gemini, because Mercury ruling Gemini, Jupiter ruling Sagittarius. Remember, those are the opposite signs. And Mercury is the information, it's the logic, it's the communicative point of us understanding each other. But Jupiter is knowledge that is not based out of a book or out of some kind of factual type of situation. Jupiter is wisdom and knowledge gained through experience and through risk taking and taking that chance and trying to learn through discovery. So I always find Mercury and Jupiter so interesting, especially when people have aspects that are strongly linked together in the chart. The mind jumps to conclusions at times with the square, right? It's not working cohesively as a team like it would be for the conjunct. So the person may want to work from a place of intellect. You know, the person may be like, I want to be really good at this, or I want to be really known for this, or I want to be smart at this, but they may move quickly before they master something. So this could be a person who, and again, it depends on other placements in the chart, but this could be a person who, you know, is moving from different thing to different thing. Like, you know, they used to be this, and now they're this, and now they think this, and now their mindset is this, because the square is like, it doesn't merge together, you know. So there can be a serious aversion also to formal learning, you know, or some difficulty there with formal learning, kind of aversion to the process of, and I think Mercury and Jupiter are both equally important. Experience is important, but also sometimes we have to know where to learn from. All of us learned from something or someone at first. Even people who are self-learners, well, you picked up a book, you read something, or you watched something, right? You know, and then you went to go experience it. And so I think both are very important planets, but that square can make it very difficult to merge both. Jupiter is great, but if all you are working on is what you've experienced, you're actually not able to tell people what it literally is. You're only working from your own truth instead of being able to give people the cold, hard facts, right? Because Mercury is more curious and Jupiter is more, well, this is what I've experienced. So it's a difficult time merging those worlds. And remember, Jupiter is short-term travel. That's why it's based on the first house. It moves to the third house, short-term travel, neighbors, your neighborhood, your locality. And the ninth house, Jupiter, long-distance travel, foreign energy, going to foreign places and things like that. So if it separates these things, it means that there's probably usually in someone's chart, especially if we analyze it, they're leaning in one way over the other. Mercury square Saturn, so authoritative way of speaking to others, you know, and yeah, maybe sometimes, you know, could be the person where it's like, yeah, I don't like the way you speak to me. Like, I don't like the way you talk to people, right? Sometimes you can have people that have that effect on others, or they know how to use it. Some people do have this placement and it's not bad. They turn it on and off. They know how to tell people what it is. And it's not in a way of bringing or uniting people. It sometimes does have to be that authoritative energy, that parental or that disciplinarian energy to help other people see how serious things are. The thing with the square is that it can produce tension. And so if that's the way someone's coming off all the time, it can mean tension between them and other folks. Deliberate mode of action, some of these folks like can struggle with formal education or prefer the deliberate mode of action. So this could be a person who's like, you know, they're not going to go learn new things necessarily. They're going to be like, this is the way it is. Saturn's energy dealing with that traditional way of thinking. It's like, this is how it is. And I'm going to communicate to you guys, this is how we're doing it. The person can be very serious in terms of relying on structure. And like I said, preconceived notions, preconceived ideas could be this person's mode. Now, that's why I said at the beginning of this video, for those that watched it, we can't assume with the Mercury square Saturn what someone leans on, because it could be the square is really this person relies so much on the Saturn that they forget to be curious and look at new ways of doing things and checking with other people to see what they think before saying, no, this is the rule, this is how it is, this is how it's going to go. The energies have a different time sharing the stage, you know, because anytime we see Saturn show up, we're dealing with reputation. We're dealing with some type of heightened prominence. And with Mercury there, it can mean, it could be someone who's not really soft, or it's not a very, you know, uniting energy when it comes to communication. That does not mean this person might not have a good way of using this. There are people where Mercury square Saturn works for them. And maybe they are at a place of authoritative energy where they have to speak a certain way or have to do certain things in a certain manner. But this is what you would have with this Mercury square Saturn situation. Mercury square Uranus. Now here's the thing with this. So it can definitely lead to a person who's not satisfied with the facts or logic. Right? They are just not really going to immediately accept it as something that they want to do. In fact, certain things, certain types of information, and especially coming from a societal lens, Uranus is always going to be linked to some type of societal belief, some type of societal trend, some type of societal, you know, innovative approach. What happens is like, it's a hard time accepting that, you know, they might rebel in a more extreme way. then Mercury opposition Uranus, because the opposition, we can merge that. If someone has Mercury in Gemini opposing Uranus and Sagittarius, well, they're both mutable energies, right? We can find a way to bring them together. But if there's a different energy going on, you know, let's say someone has Mercury in Cancer opposition Uranus Libra, I'm just, you know, thinking of squares, placements that was square, well now we have a very different energy that is opposing one another, right? It means that the person, it's hard for it to come together. So what's going to happen is it's going to show out in their life as a battle. Those areas of life are going to seem very distinct and very different. This could be the person where, like, you know, they're at work, they're always told their ideas are not, no, that's too weird, it's too far out there. Or it could be a person that within their family, they always feel like they go to the family dinner and they end up arguing about social issues, right? And anything that I say in life that is difficult, I always tell people, always find the right environment to be in. And also work through your placements. None of these mean this is the end all be all, and squares can definitely work in someone's benefit. Everybody has squares in their chart. It doesn't make anything less than. It just means that's a challenge. That's something you have to overcome and learn how to use that square and use that energy. When can you use this energy and when can you use that energy? Because sometimes Mercury square Uranus, and again, the Mercury conjunct person might have more of, especially if someone has Mercury in Libra conjunct, I don't know. Let me actually use a different sign. I'm trying to think of a sign where it would work. But like the Mercury conjunct Uranus person, Aquarius, let's say, it works for them because they're a unit together. They're not really opposing anything. It's just who they are. Whereas opposed to Uranus, it's the square, where now the square is like, it's something starkly different. It's something that really stands out as a barrier. It stands out as a challenge in some way. And so what can happen is a lot of times these people can feel disconnected. Like when trying to express unpopular opinions, it's important not to go so far out that it causes tension with other people. And doing so in a way that it's a shared understanding, right? Uranus sometimes can be so far out there, it has a hard time really connecting to other people in a way, and it can have great ideas. Mercury square Uranus, it pushes you to be like, you know what, those people thought that, they didn't like my idea, well, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. So it does, the square is not always this horrible limiting thing, it just means you have to know how to use it. Mercury square Neptune is going to produce someone who thinks in a very idealistic manner, but it can sometimes be to an extreme, right? This could be a person who maybe leans too much on Neptune. Again, that's why I said you have to look at the person's chart, because a person like, well, wait, wouldn't Mercury square Neptune mean that the person doesn't use their imagination or they feel limited? It could definitely mean the person feels limited. They want to use their imagination. They want to be creative, but they're stifled or they're stuck. However, we would have to look at that chart, because if that person is a Pisces and their chart ruler, they're a Pisces rising, Pisces sun, 12th house placements. Well, Neptune, and their Neptune is in, I don't know, the 8th house. I don't know. This person, actually Neptune does not belong in the 8th house, it belongs to the 12th house, but in general, that being in a water house, this person is going to have more Neptunian experiences than the average person. Therefore, they have to use Neptune. But what happens is Mercury, they can get stuck. They definitely can. People can get stuck learning something that someone else told them to do. This could be the person who doesn't follow their dreams. This could be the person whose parent is like, you need to do this because we come from a line of lawyers. We come from a line of people that do this job. And you follow it, but that's not really your dream. Right? And the farther and farther you get from your dream, the harder it feels to feel connected to it. And it starts to feel like a distant thing. Whereas when you started off younger, you thought it was possible. But now you don't think it's possible anymore because you've been jaded by the world. But this person can go through extremes with accepting the facts, sometimes distorting the facts, having a hard time really dealing with and operating through the facts. However, again, a tension sometimes produces results, because sometimes you need something to kind of be all up in your face for you, like, oh shoot, I need to change this. So you can also have people who are drastically creative here, right? Or people who know how to just, flip it on and flip it off in order to really, be logical, Mercury, and be creative, Neptune. But again, the actual sign, the degrees, your houses, all of that, your own interpretation of your chart is going to be an important part of that. Mercury square Pluto. Well, definitely when I hear this, there is some sense of power struggles mentally. This is the person who, wants to be seen mentally adept, possibly wants to be seen as mentally powerful, wants to be seen as somebody who kind of has, certain abilities, can work really hard at overcoming mental difficulties. A square can mean that kind of challenge. This could be a person who kind of rose to the top, a person who maybe dropped out of high school, but then somehow still said, no, I'm going to make it, and did something with their life to really produce some type of outcome. This person can, they could be prone to getting into dramatic exchanges or situations like that occur due to words. A person who kind of, even fights with words, perhaps. Also, potential to manipulate or be less subtle. Now, like I said before, that Mercury conjunct Pluto person, anybody can be manipulative if they have the strategy, the skills to do so, and if they're that type of person. But the thing is, Mercury conjunct Pluto, especially let's say it's in Libra or something, you're not even going to know they're manipulating you. You're not even going to know. A square is in your face. It's tension. It's obvious. So it could be a person who is like, it's like, that they're trying to get their way. They're trying to push their way through, and you see it, but they're so overpowering with it. Usually this is going to be through words, through information, just, taking information, making it something that puts them in a light of having and possessing power in some way. So it's not really always bad if the person uses the square in order to produce some sense of mental transformation. This could be a person where maybe they go through different points in life where they start to focus and learn new things and new skills that they can apply to a different field, a different career, or something like that. But sometimes it can definitely deal with power struggles, or even some people not feeling powerful enough in their speech, not feeling like people listen to them, not having that magnetism or that effect that they want. So again, that would mean, you'd have to look at the entire chart to really see how it would play out. Mercury square Chiron. Now, if Chiron is the wounded healer and it is dealing with past upsets, past hurts, this creates a barrier to your understanding of your own trauma, perhaps. So if Mercury is the mind and what we understand and what we can logically think through, it's the facts, it is, analysis. You may have endured or faced certain things that are difficult for you to speak about. And I think with some people, you might just put it to the side. You might not even contend with it, but a square is tension. It might be something that some people think they've overcome, or they think doesn't bother them, but it does. It could mean someone who is plagued with a lot of thoughts of their past. This could be a person who grew up in a very difficult upbringing, and no matter how much they have grown and moved themselves up, they still think about how they were brought up, how they were parented, and things of that nature. This is potentially when you'll see Chiron has more significance. In some people's charts, Chiron is a blimp, right? It's there and then it goes away. But what I mean is, in some people's charts, Chiron is there. It's by itself. It might not even have that many aspects that are negative to it. So we look at someone's Chiron and be like, okay, here's what it might mean, but that person might overcome it a little bit easier. If someone has a bunch of squares and aspects to Chiron, or there's some type of significance or planets around Chiron, that is something to investigate and look into, because Chiron can be healed. But it does require the person to be acknowledged and view it as like, yes, sometimes we have to go back to where we first experienced a certain hurt or something in our life in order to move forward and really unpack that. Because it can be hurting us in the present day, and we're not even aware of how that's happening. So that's one aspect of the Mercury square Chiron, is it might be more significant in this person. They might not speak up. They might feel afraid to speak up. They might have been punished for speaking up. They might have lost their voice or something. And it's going to be, it can be more significant to some people than others, depending on what else is in the chart. Now, Mercury square Juno, though we look at Juno as the marriage asteroid, it is the ideal partner, just to keep it really simple. If you have Mercury square or any squares of Juno, it does mean there's more you have to learn with your partner. There's going to be some journeys you have to go through to really discover one another. You might go through some difficult times, just because, a square is going to produce some type of tension. As I said before, it's a battle. It's something that seems hard because it's so extreme. It's so different. A square is like, it's like your job saying, okay, I want you to work in New York and then Miami at the same time. Like, I want you to work, you're like, what? Right? If your job is like, okay, Monday go to Miami and Tuesday go to New York, you're going to be like, what is going on? That's kind of what it feels like with a square. It just feels like energy that is not really well, defined. It's not in alignment. There can be a need to better understand each other before being in a union. So if you have Mercury square Chiron, really taking the time to understand each other's communication style, really taking the time to listen to each other. A lot of spiritual folks, yes, I know, you get into a relationship, or a lot of you who have twin flames and soulmate situations or whatever you have going on, you feel and you sense that, right? You sense that. But we're also in the physical world, and being in a soulmate relationship or a twin flame relationship or whatever does not mean perfection. It simply means y'all recognize each other, right? So Mercury is still going to be important in communicating and understanding each other's styles as well. Now, Mercury square North Node. So if you have square North Node, right? This means that you have to learn what you wish to message. You have to find your voice. You don't, it doesn't easily connect at first with your mission to finding where you want to go in this lifetime. Because remember, the North Node is now. It is this lifetime. And so a square is meaning there's some tension. You can get caught up mentally in the wrong pursuits or other pursuits. This could be a person who spends like 10 years studying a certain thing to get a career, but then they realize later on that's not really what they want to do. Or you can use that to propel yourself to the next level of where you want to be. So it means you need to use learning, communication, intellect to lead to your North Node, right? Because it does mean you're going to be in a different mindset for a while. You're likely going to be in a different mindset, a different mode of thinking, and then at some point in life, you start to understand more that you need to move towards your purpose. Now, for example, I'll say this with mine. I have Mercury and Leo. So when you think of Mercury and Leo, you first think of self-assertion, you think of speech, you think of someone who is prideful in their ideas or is creative in expressing those ideas, right? Now, mine's in the 12th house, so we already know about Mercury in the 12th house. But the North Node is in Taurus in the 9th house, right? But North Node in Taurus is learning how to be practical, how to merge what they are already good at, how to be kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very common sense, practical approach. It's different than Leo. That square is very different. However, I'm learning, I've done the work, right? If the 9th and the 12th house, they both have to do with purpose. One is just more outer purpose and one is inner purpose. In terms of learning and understanding my own expression through Mercury. And the 9th house is also, I have to simplify things for people. Yes, I know a lot of you guys know tons of things too. I'm not saying I'm special in that regard, but I'm like, all the things that I know and all the insights that we all get through the 12th house, we can't tell everything because it'd be like a million years of worth of knowledge. I have to pinpoint things through the 9th house and spread my message that way and make it simple and to the point. But my Mercury and Leo means I'm creative. I need to be creative and constantly thinking and constantly aware and confident in what I'm saying. So that's a way in which you can deal with a square. It's possible. But again, for my North Node especially, yes, it took a while. I always was somewhat involved in my North Node pursuit. I just didn't know it, but it took a while. So that's why, this is what I'm saying with the square. Now, if you're a Mercury square in the South Node, there's more of a karmic lesson here. When we start looking at aspects to the South Node, any planets near the South Node, it can give you hints. It's a hint of, hey, last time, this is what happened. So lessons to learn from the past about using your mind. You also might be here to learn something new. So for those of you into past lives who've gotten past life readings and things like that, it could be like if in a past life you were a spiritual healer, or in the past life you were a nurse, or in a past life you were, you worked on a railroad or something like that. You're now here to learn something new, right? You're going to probably embody certain traits from that. Right? And it also can mean like whatever you were doing then was necessary, but now it's like it didn't work out. So now you have to learn something new. You didn't master something, or you didn't learn something in the way in which it actually allowed you to be more aligned with your purpose then. And so now your Mercury square North Node, it's a South Node, I'm sorry, it's a signal to you. You have to learn something new. If something feels familiar, you gotta kind of open up your horizons and allow yourself to, experience new information and not be so afraid, right, of moving towards a new direction, because that South Node is going to want you to stay. It's going to be everything in life. I mean, in general, astrology aside, right? We are more comfortable with what is familiar to us, but at some point we have to understand that doesn't always help us grow. All right. So That was it with Mercury squares. All right. So if you have any ideas for any other aspects I should do next, please let me know. Drop them in the comments, and thanks for watching.